Hey guys, today we step into the rough-spun tunic of a medieval rat catcher. You're not a knight, nor a monk, nor even a baker. You're something much smellier and oddly essential. The town hates you until they need you, and oh, they need you now. You're about to start your day curled on a musty straw cot, wrapped in a blanket that might have been burlap in another life. It's still dark out, but not quiet. There's a familiar sound light and fast scrit, 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 scratching across the warped wooden floorboards, just inches from your ear. You groan, rubbing the sleep from your eyes, and blink at the thatched ceiling. You already know what awaits you. Not glory, not gold, just another day with the rats. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know where you're listening from and what time it is for you. It's always nice knowing where my fellow sleepy historians are tuning in from. Now, as you shuffle upright, the straw crunches under you, and something darts from the shadow beside your boot. You don't even flinch. It's just one of the usual tenants. There's something comforting in a weird way about the predictability of rats. People may lie. Rats are honest. They're hungry sneaky, and they always come back. You stretch your arms over your head joints, cracking like old hinges, and pull on your patchy linen overshirt. Outside, the fog is clinging to the alleyways, and the dawn smells like mildew and smoke. You live near the tanners, so every morning smells like a wet goat in denial. You step outside, and your foot immediately finds a puddle that probably isn't just water. Welcome to your glamorous life. As you begin your morning rounds, you check the traps you left by the chicken coops. 2 sprung. 1 success. The third is gone. Just gone. Entire trap vanished. That's not how this is supposed to go. You frown. Not a great omen. The rats are learning, or you're just getting slow. You pick up the burlap sack you used to carry your catches, giving it a shake to loosen yesterday's smell. As you swing past the bakery, because yes, rat catchers still need breakfast, you notice a group of children shrieking and throwing rocks at a cluster of shadows by the alley wall. A closer look reveals half a dozen plump, brazen rats gathered like they own the place. They don't even flinch. Bold little beasts. You tip your hat to them. Respect where it's due. Historically, rat infestations were especially brutal in medieval towns. Open sewers, food scraps everywhere, and walls with enough gaps to let in a small goat-perfect conditions for rodents to thrive. Some scholars estimate that certain towns had more rats than humans. Makes you wonder who really ran things. One child runs past you shouting, "Rat man, rat man." It's not exactly flattering, but it's consistent. People remember you when they're desperate. You pass a neighbor who refuses to make eye contact, even though you helped clear her pantry last week. Rat catchers, like executioners and lepers, often walk the line between necessary and socially inconvenient. Historians still argue whether medieval society genuinely feared rat catchers or just found them unpleasantly useful. You glance at your hands, calloused, scarred, a little stained. A rat once mistook your thumb for a sausage. And let's not talk about that ferret bite. One corner of the market is already swarming with vendors setting up carts, fishmongers, cabbage sellers, and the sweet old woman who somehow always knows when you're hungry. You pass her, and she drops a wrinkled apple in your pocket without a word. You nod. It's not affection, it's a form of truce. And then there it is again, that scrit scrit, You turn your head and for just a second swear you see something watching you from beneath the baker's cart. A rat, probably. Something else. You're not awake enough to think about it. You shoulder your sack. You've got 3 houses to visit today, and rumors of a new job at the Abbey. The monks, those poor cloistered souls, have been suspiciously tight-lipped about their cellars lately. Rats tend to sense silence, like cats sense weakness. The morning has only just begun, and if the rats are awake, so are you. You wander toward the bakery again, mostly out of habit, and partly because you're still hungry. The stale crust in your pocket doesn't count as breakfast, not unless you're a mouse. The bakery door is propped open, letting out the warm scent of yeasty air and burned flour. It's heavenly, which is ironic, considering your job often involves crawling under the ovens, where heaven has most definitely never reached. The baker, a round man named Oswin, with arms like ham hocks, greets you with a grumble and a nod. "They're back," he mutters, not bothering to clarify what they are. Of course they are. You'd be surprised if they weren't back. You head to the back room, ducking under a low arch, where soot has collected in a perfect pattern shaped like regret. Your boots crunch slightly on old flour dust and rat droppings, nature's confetti. The air is thick and warm, but not unpleasant. That is until you lift the hatch to the lower storage crawl space and feel the wave of warm, slightly damp, rodent-scented air hit your face like a damp wool sock straight from the armpit of the underworld. You light a stub of tallow candle and crawl halfway inside. It's a tight space, barely enough to sit up, let alone stand. The rats know this, of course. This is their playground. You spot 2 of them right away, plump and confident, sitting beside a gnawed flour sack like they've just finished brunch. One even grooms its whiskers. Bold. You pull out your sack and a short whittled stick, the persuader as you call it. Knees tap the floor. One rat scurries, the other doesn't. You sigh. You're not proud of this, but you lean in reach fast and yelp. The little beast nicks your wrist on its way out. Your skin stings. Not a deep bite, just a warning. But still, you mutter something rude under your breath and try not to dwell on the increasing frequency of these bitey encounters. Rats in medieval Europe weren't just a nuisance. They were opportunist scavengers and survivors. But most historians agree that the black rat Rattus rattus, the small agile climber, was the more dominant species in towns. They could scale walls, hide in rafters, and nest in thatch roofs. And yes, bite exposed skin when you least expected it. You pull back from the crawl space and sit for a moment, brushing flour off your sleeves. You inspect the bite, small, shallow, but annoyingly warm. You make a mental note to rub garlic on it later, not because it's proven to work, but because it smells strong and makes you feel proactive. You stretch your back with a satisfying crackle and turn to leave when Oswin reappears. Caught any. One escaped. One drew blood. One just stared at me like it owned the place, you reply. So standard morning. He offers you a wedge of hard bread and a piece of cheese that may have lived through a minor war. You accept both with gratitude. Eating with one hand, you use the other to tap your belt pouch where a few silver pennies jingle. A good day bite aside, you lean against the outer wall of the bakery, chewing slowly. The bread is so dry it might count as a weapon in another context. You look down at your boots, patched leather slightly chewed, and notice a tiny bite mark near the ankle that wasn't there yesterday. That's new. You sigh again, a long theatrical sigh, meant for no one but yourself. The rats are getting hungrier, or you're just tastier. You should really start storing your socks somewhere less accessible. A woman walks past pushing a cart of cabbages, shooting you a wary look. It's not you personally, it's your profession. You smell like rat, look like you haven't slept, and mutter to yourself in cellars. Townsfolk don't exactly invite you to Sunday feasts. Rat catchers were, socially speaking, somewhere between a chimney sweep and a medieval dentist. Necessary but not dinner guests. Historians still argue whether communities truly ostracized rat catchers or just preferred to avoid thinking too hard about them. After all, you are a reminder that the town is filthy and that death travels in fur coats. Finishing your meager meal, you tie your sack, close check your traps again, and squint up at the sky. The sun's barely risen, and you've already earned a wound, a hunk of cheese, and another story for your imaginary memoir. You pat your pocket now home to an apple half a crust and one confused breadcrumb. You head off toward your next stop, stepping over rat droppings with the grace of a man who's made peace with the squish underfoot. Your day is just beginning, and it's going to be a long, squeaky, mildly infected one. You adjust the strap on your burlap sack and head back to your cottage to fetch the rest of your gear. Today's jobs are not for amateurs. The baker's basement was only a warm-up. You're due at the magistrate's house by mid-morning, and he's got opinions about professionalism, so it's best not to show up with just your crusty boots and last night's trap. Back inside your one-room dwelling, which generously doubles as a workshop storage area and retirement home for broken traps, you survey your arsenal. Laid out neatly, well neatly for you, are the tools of your trade. There's your prized rat stick, smoothed by years of use. It's not sharp, but it's quick. Then there's the collapsible cage made from bent wire and desperation. You pick up your small net, stitched from a curtain someone donated after seeing a rat run across it. There's also a leather glove, singular, because its partner was sacrificed last winter in a tragic molasses incident. And finally, there's Gerald. Gerald is a ferret. More accurately, Gerald is your ferret, and quite possibly the only creature in this town that doesn't judge you for your job. He's white with little gray feet and the temperament of a disgruntled tax collector. He pops his head out of a clay pot, blinking slowly as if to say, "We're doing this again." Yes, Gerald, we are. Historically, ferrets were commonly used by rat catchers across Europe from the early Middle Ages through the Renaissance. Their slender bodies and natural hunting instinct made them perfect for navigating burrows and chasing rodents out of tight spaces. Whether trained or just ornery by nature, ferrets like Gerald were the medieval equivalent of pest control drones, only with sharper teeth and mood swings. You pack a few dried fish scraps for him and wrap a strip of cloth around your wrist, more out of habit than function. The rat bite still tingles, and it's starting to itch. You choose to interpret that as a sign of healing rather than doom. Optimism is part of the job. Once geared up, you take one last look around your cluttered sanctuary. Your journal lies half covered by a cracked mug and a feather you still plan to turn into a quill. You make a mental note to write about the baker's standoff later, maybe embellish it. Maybe make it sound like you won. As you step outside with Gerald on your shoulder and the tools clanking softly in your sack, a group of children scatter in front of you. One yells, "It's the rat whisperer." Another shouts, "He's got the demon snake again." Gerald hisses. You smile. The truth is, your odd little trade has given you a strange sort of freedom. You don't owe fealty to any lord. You don't tend fields, wait tables, or bow to priests. You just chase the things everyone else runs from. You make your way toward the richer end of town, where the buildings lean a little less and the rats are slightly better fed. The cobblestones are tighter here, and the smell is only mildly offensive. The magistrate's house looms ahead large with well-oiled hinges and windows that almost shut properly. Fancy. He greets you with the thin-lipped expression of a man who's never needed to trap his own dinner. "They're in the pantry," he says, gesturing vaguely behind him. "Make it quick." You nod and step inside. Gerald sniffs the air with calculated disapproval. The pantry is surprisingly organized. Shelves of pickled beets, smoked meats, and one suspicious-looking jar labeled fish jam line the walls. You spot rat droppings near the bottom shelf. That's your entry point. You place a few baited traps, some with cheese, some with crusts, soaked in fish oil, and nudge Gerald toward the corner with a soft whistle. He disappears like a whiskered arrow into the shadows. While you wait, you take a seat on an overturned crate. The bite on your wrist throbs again, and you press it lightly, checking for swelling. Still manageable. You glance around the room and notice a half-eaten wheel of hard cheese. Classic mistake. Rats are connoisseurs of human laziness. Leave anything out and it becomes community property overnight. One squeal, one scuffle, and Gerald reappears with a twitching tail between his teeth. That's one down. You empty your net, reset your traps, and begin packing up when you hear a soft sound, scrit, 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 from inside the wall. Rats in the wall. Of course. The high-class rats always go for insulation and acoustics. You tap the wall gently and listen. The sound stops. You knock again softly, and this time you hear something that gives you pause, a faint thunk. Not a rat. Not exactly. Something heavier. Something deliberate. You glance at Gerald. He tilts his head. Even he looks mildly concerned. You lean in place, your ear to the wall, and whisper, "We'll get to that later." You make your way back to the door, nod politely to the magistrate, and hold up your sack. 2 caught. Likely more in the walls. Your cheese needs a lid. He grunts. "Take this for your trouble." He hands you a copper coin and a firm pat on the back, as if this job hasn't made you permanently lopsided already. You walk away with a jingle in your pouch and the lingering sensation that something behind that pantry wall might have been listening back. The market square is in chaos. Not the kind of chaos that involves torches and pitchforks, mind you. This is medieval chaos, which means lots of shouting, waving of radishes, and the occasional collapsing cabbage stall. You've barely rounded the corner when a shrill scream cuts through the air. It's old Marjorie who sells carrots, so bendy they've probably transcended vegetable classification. She's standing on a barrel, jabbing a wooden spoon at the cobblestones like she's warding off demons. They're everywhere. "In me parsnips and me baskets. One ran up me skirt," she bellows. You stop, lean on your stick, and blink at her. Are you sure it wasn't a strong gust of wind? Don't you sass me, Ratman. Fair enough. You scan the square, taking in the damage. Several vendors have abandoned their stalls, leaving behind suspiciously chewed wares. One meat pie appears to be moving. A boy pokes it with a stick, then decides he doesn't want lunch anymore. You spot at least 6 rats just casually strolling along the edge of the fishmonger's stand, as if browsing. One even pauses to sniff a smoked trout and walks off unimpressed. It's not just an infestation anymore, it's a takeover. You find a relatively rat-free barrel and climb onto it, trying to look authoritative. Everyone calm down, you shout, voice cracking slightly. Gerald, curled around your neck like an exasperated scarf, gives a huff. A few heads turn. Most don't. A cabbage flies past your ear. You try again. This is why you call me before the flour sacks go missing and the rodents unionize. Someone in the crowd yells, "Then do something, rodent lord." Honestly, you kind of like that title. Here's the truth. Medieval towns were perfect rat habitat. Open-air markets, piles of food waste, and buildings made from materials that were basically invitations to chew. There were no garbage systems, no refrigeration, just heaps of barely edible food, slightly moldy cheese, and buckets of animal parts. A rodent paradise. You hop down from the barrel and start doing what you do best, improvising. You grab a few traps from your sack and start tossing them strategically behind the sausage cart, under the egg crates, next to a suspicious pile of dried eels. You whistle to Gerald, who scampers off toward the grain sacks with a kind of grim determination only a professional ferret can muster. While working, you overhear 2 butchers debating the cause of the rat explosion. "It's the new moon," says one. "They always go wild on the new moon." "No. No," says the other, wiping his cleaver. "It's a curse. From the well. I saw a rat swimming in there." Swimming. Historians still argue. You mutter under your breath whether medieval people genuinely believed in well curses or just needed an excuse for bad plumbing. A child tugs on your sleeve. "Excuse me, rat catcher, sir." "Yes." "Can you make them stop looking at me?" You glance down and see 3 rats lined up under a fruit cart, watching the child like bored guards at a royal tomb. One licks its paw without breaking eye contact. You admit it's unnerving. Try staring back, you advise. Assert dominance. The child squints, crosses his arms, and promptly bursts into tears. You sigh and hand him a plum. "Here, bribe them with this." Business, as they say, is booming. But you're beginning to suspect the rats are evolving. They're too coordinated, too theatrical. Earlier, you could have sworn one bowed after stealing a cheese rind. Your theory: it's not just the food, it's the drama. Rats, like many townsfolk, enjoy a bit of flair. By mid-morning, you've caught a dozen. The traps are filling fast. Gerald returns with something furry in his mouth and a victorious glint in his eye. You reward him with a strip of dried cod, which he accepts like a tired knight accepting his knighthood. You start making rounds between vendors, offering rat removal packages. Basic trapping cellar sweep and scarecrow rat repellent bundles available, you pitch. Also offering blessings for an extra fee, non-denominational. You're not a priest, obviously, but you do mutter convincingly. The vendors are wary but desperate. You get paid in coins, eggs one suspicious-looking rabbit, and what appears to be a perfectly round cheese wheel with a bite taken out of it. "It's lucky," says the vendor. Sure it is. By the time the sun climbs above the rooftops, the market has begun to calm. Sort of. People are back at their stalls, if a bit jumpier. You spot old Marjorie back in her barrel, now using her spoon to conduct imaginary rat operas. One vendor has taken to wearing chainmail on his feet. You choose not to comment. You slump onto a bench, rubbing your temples. This job should have come with a badge, or hazard pay, or a nice hat. As you munch on the suspicious cheese, you catch a glimpse of something at the far end of the square. A single rat, larger than most, sitting on top of a crate, still as a statue, watching you. You blink. It blinks back. Then, as calmly as a duke at court, it hops down and disappears into the alley. You frown. You don't like it when they watch. It implies strategy, or worse, organization. One thing's for sure, the rodents aren't done yet, but neither are you. The baker's basement and the market square were just warm-up acts. Now it's time for the main event, your first official job of the day, a proper appointment with a proper client, and hopefully a proper payment that doesn't involve root vegetables. You tug your hood forward and head down Wattle Street, where the buildings lean slightly inward as if they're gossiping about you. The air smells like boiled cabbage, and yesterday's fish bones normal for this part of town. Gerald rides on your shoulder again, half asleep and smelling faintly of fish. Your destination is the home of Maud, a widow who owns 4 goats, 1 angry goose, and the most haunted-looking pantry in the parish. Her letter delivered in shaky handwriting on a piece of parchment that smelled like fear and pickled onions simply read, "They're under the floor again. Bring help, and maybe fire." When you knock, the door swings open, slowly revealing Maud herself, wiry, determined, with hair like a bundle of dry herbs. She squints at you. "Took you long enough." "They've been dancing under the floorboards all night. My goat's refusing to sleep indoors. Maybe the goat knows something you offer." "The goose keeps laughing," she adds darkly. You enter the house, careful to avoid stepping on the welcome mat, made of tightly braided twine and something that might be hair. The inside is dim, warm, and filled with the subtle ambiance of mild panic and old soup. Maud gestures toward the far corner of the kitchen, where a loose plank leans just a little too much to the left. You don't have to kneel to hear it scrit, 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 echoing upward like a rodent symphony warming up. You crouch and lift the plank. Beneath it lies darkness, dust, and a pair of small, glinting eyes. There she hisses. "They stared at me last night. One of them had a hat." You blink. A hat, a little scrap of cloth, like a bandit. You glance at Gerald, who responds by yawning. It's not uncommon, historically speaking, for people in the Middle Ages to attribute strange behaviors to rats. There were superstitions about rats carrying messages, stealing souls, or even plotting revenge. One 14th century superstition claimed that if a rat stared at you for too long, it was measuring your soul for departure. Historians still argue whether these beliefs were taken seriously or were simply coping mechanisms you mutter as you lower a candle into the floorboards. Maud leans in. "If they are measuring me, I hope they like what they see." You keep your trap comment to yourself as you slide into the crawl space. Yes, again, Gerald scampers in ahead of you, tail swishing. The space is cramped and smells like cabbage ghosts. You crawl forward elbowing dust aside, and set 2 traps baited with smoked sardine. It's a favorite among the braver rats, and also you, if you're being honest. A soft shuffle to your right makes you pause, then a tiny squeak, then another, and suddenly the room feels crowded. You slowly turn your head. 6 rats, all in a line, watching you. One is indeed wearing a scrap of red cloth, like a bandana. Or maybe it's just stuck to its head. Either way, the effect is unsettling. You blink. The rats blink back. Gerald lunges. Pandemonium. The crawl space erupts in noise. Scrabbling, thumping one muffled curse from you, and a victorious squeal from Gerald as he returns with a tail in his mouth and fur sticking up in directions that defy nature. You crawl backward, brushing cobwebs from your face, and emerge from under the floor, just as Maud places a bowl of something steaming and suspiciously lumpy on the table. For your trouble, she says. You eye the bowl. Is it edible? Not legally, she replies. Still you accept. She also hands you a single coin and a strip of cloth, in case you want your ferret to match the rat. You stare at it. I'll think about it. As you prepare to leave, the goose squawks loudly from outside. You step out to investigate and spot it staring intently at the side of the house, where fresh gnaw marks trail up the wall like tiny ladder rungs. You run your hand along the marks, higher than usual, bolder, hungrier. You whisper to the goose, you and me both, friend. With Gerald back in your pocket and a slightly chewed trap in hand, you move on. The day is heating up, and the rats aren't slowing down. If anything, business is too good. You're starting to feel less like a rat catcher and more like a tour guide in the rodent renaissance. You sigh. They've unionized, haven't they? Gerald doesn't answer, but you could swear he smirks. You don't mean to be famous. It just happens. Somewhere between clearing the Abbey's turnip cellar last month and single-handedly removing a rat nest the size of a piglet from beneath the tannery, people started whispering your name with a strange mixture of fear and admiration, or possibly indigestion. It's hard to tell in this town. Now, as you wander through the lower village toward your next stop, you can feel the stairs. The baker's apprentice gives you a wide berth. 2 children cross themselves as you pass, and the old blacksmith nods solemnly, then mutters, "Blessed be the whiskerless." You have no idea what that means, but you nod back. In the middle of the square, someone has drawn a picture of you in charcoal on a wooden wall. It's not flattering. Your ears are too big, your nose is even bigger, and your ferret is somehow twice your size and wearing a crown. Gerald seems pleased. You're not quite a local legend, but you're definitely a topic of gossip. Some say you talk to the rats. Some say the rats talk back. Others say you were raised by them and that you sleep hanging upside down from the rafters like a bat. You haven't corrected any of these rumors, mostly because they're more entertaining than the truth. Your job is practical, gritty, and desperately needed. And the more successful you are, the worse it makes everyone else feel about the state of their homes. That's the problem with being good at something disgusting. Nobody invites you to parties. Historically, people who handled unclean jobs, tanners, gravediggers, gong farmers, rat catchers, were simultaneously essential and unwelcome. Medieval society had a knack for depending on people it didn't want to acknowledge. You were paid, sure, but rarely thanked. Some towns even forced rat catchers to wear a badge or bell to warn others of their presence. Not that you'd mind a little bell. Gerald would love that. You stroll past the mill pond where a group of fishwives are gutting carp and complaining about someone stealing their drying lines. Bet it's the rats, one mutters. Last week they dragged off a whole boot. You glance toward the water's edge and spot a very guilty-looking rat dragging what may or may not be a sock. The fishwives see you. Oh no, don't you bring them here. I'm not a summoner, you reply. I'm a cleaner. That's what the last one said. Then our cabbages started moving. You tip your hat politely and move on. At the far end of the square, a boy runs up to you with a folded piece of parchment and a face full of freckles. Message for you, Ratman, he says cheerfully, as if delivering a love note. You unfold the note. It's scrawled in a panicked hand and smeared with what may be ink or something darker. They chewed through the church bell rope. We've been ringing a fishnet for 2 days. You sigh. That explains the echo. The boy grins. Do the rats really know your name? I don't tell them my name, you say. That would give them too much power. He runs off giggling, and you're left to wonder whether that was a joke or not. You arrive at the next house on your list, an apothecary judging by the bundles of herbs hanging over the door and the smell of dried toadstools. The owner, a small woman named Gilda, meets you at the threshold with an exhausted expression and a broom in hand. They keep stealing my licorice root, she says, and one of them made a bed in the sage. Gerald's ears perk up. He likes sage. You follow her inside. The place is orderly but tense like a duck pond, moments before a dog jumps in. Small drawers line the walls, each labeled with medieval Latin that may or may not be spelled correctly. The floor creaks in a pattern that feels deliberate. Gilda lowers her voice. I think they know when I'm coming. You nod. They usually do. Rats are sensitive to vibrations, scent, and sound. It's one of the reasons they're so hard to catch. They hear you coming. Some could detect your footsteps from across the room. One rat-catching manual from the late 1500s has even claimed that rats could smell evil intention, which frankly makes you wonder how you've caught any at all. You kneel near the back of the shop, where tiny paw prints mark a trail to a hole beneath the shelves. It's too small for your hand, but just right for Gerald. You whistle. He bolts inside like a tiny fury missile. A squeak, a crash, a puff of oregano. Gerald returns dragging what appears to be a stunned rat and a sachet of cloves. He's nothing if not efficient. Gilda claps politely. Thank you, she says. I'll add 2 more dried frog legs to your tab. You don't ask questions. Not anymore. You step back, out into the fading sunlight, your sack heavier, and your hands slightly more herby than before. A few townsfolk give you side eyes as you pass, whispering. He's the reason the rats are organizing, someone says. No, another replies. He's the only one stopping them. You pull your hood a little lower. Fame, it turns out, is mostly unwanted attention and the lingering scent of sage. You've barely made it to halfway down Turnip Lane when you hear the distinct sound of someone shouting your name in a way that suggests immediate inconvenience. Oi, rat catcher. You turn. It's Willem, the local carpenter, waving frantically from his workshop with sawdust clinging to his hair and panic in his eyes. You sigh. So much for a moment of quiet. You cross the road, dodging a cart full of cabbages and a pig who looks like it has places to be. Willem meets you at the doorway, motioning wildly. It's in the rafters. In the rafters. You raise an eyebrow. A rat, big as a cat. Maybe as a cat. You peer inside. The workshop smells of pine sweat and the kind of desperation only someone who's tried to fight a rodent with a measuring stick can produce. Willem points upward where the beamwork of the roof creates perfect rat highways. Sure enough, you hear the faint, rhythmic patter-patter scratch, followed by what sounds suspiciously like chewing. You nod solemnly. You're lucky. Some rats chew quietly. I feel so blessed. You unpack a few essentials bait traps net and a small collapsible ladder held together with more faith than physics. Gerald stretches and yawns dramatically before scurrying up into the rafters like a little rope-tailed commando. Willem squints at him. That your assistant? No, he's the boss. I just carry the bag. While Gerald gets to work, Willem shuffles nervously around the workshop, muttering something about cursed lumber and haunted chisels. You decide to ask about his new apprentice, who you'd heard is barely 14, and once mistook a loaf of bread for a rabbit. Willem groans. Oh, don't remind me. Yesterday he tried to measure a rat using a spoon and dropped it on my foot. The spoon, not the rat. You can't help but laugh. At least the rat was merciful. A moment later, a loud thump echoes from the rafters. Gerald drops down gracefully, holding not one, but 2 rats in his mouth, like he's showing off. You retrieve a trap check-it and reset it. Give it 20 minutes, you tell Willem. If it sounds like dancing, it's more rats. If it sounds like arguing, you have squirrels. He nods solemnly. And if it sings, charge admission. Historically, apprentices in medieval towns were known for causing more problems than they solved. They were often unpaid, lived in their masters' homes, and spent more time learning how to not drop hot irons on their feet than actual trade. In a rat catcher's world, having an apprentice was a gamble, which is exactly why you're slightly terrified that you have one. His name is Jono. He's 13, smells like pickled onions, and has an unfortunate habit of attempting diplomacy with the rats. So far, negotiations have not gone well, just as you think it. Jono appears panting, red-faced, and dragging behind him a sack that's at least half his size. Found one, he cries, proudly dumping the sack on the ground. It wriggles, then sneezes. You open it cautiously and stare down at a hedgehog. A very confused, slightly offended hedgehog, wearing what appears to be a scrap of ribbon. Jono beams. I caught him sniffing around the turnip patch. You nod slowly. Jono, this is not a rat. I know it's a spy. Gerald peers into the sack, sniffs the hedgehog, and sneezes violently. Willem bursts into laughter so hard he nearly chokes on a wood shaving. You shoot him a look. Look. You say we don't hunt hedgehogs. We just strongly discourage their attendance. Jono looks mildly deflated, but perks up quickly. Can I keep him? You sigh. Name him something dignified. Sir Pricklebottom. That'll do. You send Jono off to release Sir Pricklebottom into the back garden with instructions not to feed him anything you wouldn't eat yourself, so no boiled leeks. As you pack up your tools, Willem hands you a small pouch of coins and a warm roll filled with what he claims is mutton. You're not sure if it's mutton? It might be turnip pretending to be mutton. Still, you accept it graciously. Thanks again, Willem says. I was this close to lighting the place on fire. Maybe hold off on that until at least the second infestation you advise. You sling your sack over your shoulder, Gerald, curling up inside it like a smug worm and nod farewell. Jono follows behind you, still whispering secrets to the hedgehog. As you walk away, you feel it that strange mix of accomplishment and quiet dread. You helped someone. You saved another pantry, another rafter, another man's pride. But with every rat you catch, you can't help but wonder, are you solving the problem, or simply making room for something worse? Your apprentice trips over his own foot. The hedgehog squeaks. Gerald snorts. Yep, things are going perfectly. Lunch, such as it is, arrives in the form of a cold salted turnip, wrapped in what you hope is a clean handkerchief. You sit on a low stone wall outside the cooper's workshop, chewing slowly and listening to the comforting hum of town gossip bubbling all around you like soup that's mostly rumors and regret. Turnip in hand, you watch people drift past. A girl balancing a basket of eggs on her head. A toothless man chasing a duck with a ladle. Two old women arguing over whether sneezing 3 times before breakfast means a plague or just bad oats. Business as usual. Jono sits beside you, unwrapping a questionable meat pie that appears to have a tail. Is this normal? He asks, poking it with a stick. Normal for who you reply, biting off a corner of your turnip and instantly regretting it. It tastes like despair and rainwater. Across the square, the tavern's door bursts open and a small crowd spills out, arguing, laughing, and coughing dramatically. One of them is gesturing wildly with what appears to be a rat trap nailed to a walking stick. You sigh. It's old Brennig, rat catcher. He booms, striding over with the wobble of someone who's had too much ale and not enough sense. You owe me a drink. I've never seen you before, but your rats stole my breakfast. That seems like a you problem. He leans closer, swaying. Do rats hold grudges? You glance at Gerald, who is now curled up in your sack, snoring gently and dreaming of conquest. I'm afraid so. Old Brennig nods gravely, then wanders off toward a barrel with every intention of making it his new home. Jono munches his pie uncertainly. Do you think people actually like us? You consider. They like the idea of us when the rats are chewing their boots, but not when we show up smelling like vinegar and ferret. Exactly. It's true. Medieval rat catchers walked a weird social tightrope, both vital and vaguely cursed. Everyone needed you, but nobody wanted to stand too close. And while there were no formal guilds for rat catchers, in most places, some towns did issue licenses, or even offer bonuses for particularly large catches. Though whether you were seen as a hero or just the weird guy with a cage full of angry rodents depended mostly on how recently someone found droppings in their pantry. Jono swings his legs and points toward a small knot of townsfolk, whispering near the chapel steps. They're talking about the plague again, he says quietly. You nod. The rumors have been growing louder over the past few weeks. A merchant arrived from the south with a cart full of spices and a suspicious cough. Then a pig keeled over in the night. Now every sneeze is met with suspicion, and every itch is a possible omen. Is it true, Jono asks, about the rats carrying it? You take a deep breath. Some say fleas, some say bad air, some say punishment from the heavens. Which do you think? I think blaming rats is easier than admitting your town is built on top of yesterday's garbage and next to a ditch full of soup bones. He nods slowly, clearly not understanding, but willing to accept any answer that sounds like it has salt and wisdom. Besides, you add, if the plague is coming, we're probably the first to know. You ever see a rat leave town, that's your sign. Like, they pack up and walk away. Exactly. With tiny suitcases and little hats. One even had a map once. Jono laughs, nearly dropping his pie. A pigeon eyes the fallen crumbs hungrily. You finish the last of your turnip with a grimace and stand stretching until your joints pop like overused rat traps. Right, you say. Breaks over. Time to eavesdrop. Eavesdrop. Information you explain is half the job. You wander slowly toward the chapel, just close enough to catch snippets of conversation. The words are exactly what you expected: sickness-cursed grain, 3 dead cats in one alley. One man swears he saw a rat the size of a dog. Another claims his neighbor has been acting strange and might be a witch. You don't say a word. You just listen, because here's the secret. Rats aren't the only things you learn to catch. There's knowledge and fear patterns and panic. Sometimes the rats are a symptom, not the problem. And you odd little rat catcher, that you have seen more of the town's underbelly than most people ever will. You pat Gerald gently. He snorts, rolls over, and steals a breadcrumb from Jono's sleeve. Your next client is waiting. Somewhere out there, another pantry is being hollowed out. Another floorboard chewed another cheese wheel, quietly devoured by a whiskered opportunist. You sling the sack over your shoulder and nod to Jono. Let's go disappoint some rodents. Can I bring the hedgehog? Only if he's sober. Sir Pricklebottom rides again. The sun has finally reached that annoying point in the sky, where it glares directly into your eyes, no matter where you walk. You shade your brow with one gloved hand and squint up at the looming silhouette ahead, an old stone abbey, weather-worn and hunched like a monk with bad posture. You've passed by this place 100 times, but today is different. Today they've asked for you, which is never a good sign. Monks don't ask for help unless something is chewing through their hymnals. Jono stares in awe. I thought they had divine protection. They do, you mutter, but rats never read scripture. You pass beneath the arched gate and enter the cloister courtyard. It's quiet, too quiet. You half expect to hear chanting, but all you catch is the flutter of pigeons and the ominous echo of tiny claws scuttling somewhere they shouldn't be. Brother Matthias greets you with the pained expression of a man who's about to confess a sin he didn't commit, but feels responsible for anyway. Thank you for coming, he whispers, glancing nervously over his shoulder. This is delicate. Oh, you want me to bless them out, you ask, already tired. No, nothing like that, he insists. Just follow me and speak softly. You exchange a glance with Jono, who's busy trying to keep Gerald from climbing a vine-covered wall. Inside the abbey, it's dim and musty. The air smells of parchment old wood and monastic anxiety. Brother Matthias leads you down a corridor lined with dusty relics and half-lit candles, muttering apologies to saints as he passes. Eventually, he stops at a heavy oak door with a single Latin inscription above it, Silencio. Down there, he says, unlocking the door. We've tried everything traps, incense fasting. You fasted. No, the rats did. You descend into the Abbey's undercroft, a cold stone chamber lined with barrel scrolls and a worrying number of half-chewed prayer cushions. The flickering candlelight reveals the telltale signs, droppings gnawed wood and shredded pages. You pick up one such page and squint at the ink. It appears to have been a hymn. Now it's modern art. Gerald leaps from Jono's arms and immediately darts behind a barrel. You follow, ducking low eyes, adjusting to the gloom. Behind the third row of dusty crates, you find it, a nest, a big one. Rats have made a fortress of holy relic boxes, hymnals, and the dried remains of what was probably once a very well-fed pantry. There's even a small piece of stained glass wedged into the pile as if decorating their little rat cathedral. Creative, you whisper. Jono gasps softly. Are they praying? Not unless they've learned Latin. Rats in religious buildings were actually a known problem in medieval Europe. Abbeys and churches often stored food scrolls and fabrics all attractive to rodents. Some records mention monks using cats to patrol the cloisters, though not always with success. One monastic chronicle from 1298 simply reads, "The rats return as does temptation. Make of that what you will." You begin laying traps, carefully whispering instructions to Gerald as he scouts the perimeter. Jono fumbles with a spool of twine and nearly knocks over a reliquary. You catch it just in time. Jono, you hiss, if you break St. Perrin's jawbone, you get to explain it to the bishop. He pales instantly and backs away like he's touched hot iron. You crouch beside the nest watching. The rats aren't scattering like they usually do. They just sit there, watching you, again, with the intensity of a choir waiting for a missed note. Do you think they're cursed? Anno whispers. You shake your head. No, just bold. Historians still argue, you murmur, whether this was natural rodent adaptation or something more superstitious townsfolk projected onto them. You finish setting the traps and place bait-dried plumfish skin and the rind of something unidentifiable but oddly appealing. Gerald circles once, then gives a satisfied chirp. Done, you announce. Seal this area for an hour. If you hear screaming, it's probably me. Brother Matthias nods, visibly relieved. You have our gratitude and our apologies. For what? He hesitates. One of the brothers called you a ferret-herding blasphemer. Tell him I said thank you. You head back up the stone stairs, brushing dust from your knees and adjusting your sack. Gerald hops into Jono's hood and promptly falls asleep. You can't blame him. Holy work is exhausting. As you exit into the courtyard, you notice a line of novice monks staring at you from the cloister walkway. One of them holds a rat skull on a string. He doesn't blink. You tip your hat politely. Blessings, you say. They scatter. Outside the gates, Jono tugs your sleeve. You think they'll actually pay us. You pull a small pouch from your belt, 3 coins, 2 buttons, and what might be a licorice bean. They already did. Jono frowns. This job is weird. You nod. And yet somehow, not the weirdest day we've had. He looks back at the Abbey's tall shadow. I think the rats were organized, like a choir. You shiver slightly. Let's not say that out loud. You pat your side, reassuring yourself that your net stick and dwindling bait supply are still with you. Because if today has taught you anything, it's that even the most sacred places can get a little squeaky. Back outside in the open air, you take a deep breath. It's damp, earthy, and only faintly laced with the smell of roasted onions from someone's nearby stew pot, an upgrade from the incense soaked rodent cathedral you just crawled through. You stretch your arms wide, and somewhere in your back a vertebra pops like a cork. Jono trudges behind you, rubbing his temples. I think that one was weird, even for us. You nod. When the rats start interior decorating with holy artifacts, it's a new level. Gerald is draped across your shoulder like a tiny sleeping scarf. He lets out a satisfied little snore, probably dreaming of rat shaped sausages or maybe rat choirs. It's hard to say with ferrets. You've barely made it 10 steps before you notice something odd your hand stings. You glance down. The rat bite from earlier has started to swell just a little. The skin around it is pinkish, and the center itches like mad. You press it gently. A bad idea. It pulses like it's holding a grudge. Jono notices your wince. Is it bad? Define bad, you reply. Does it look like it's going to fall off? Not yet. You flex your fingers. No stiffness. That's good. Then again, it's early. And this isn't your first nibble. Over the years, you've been bitten, scratched, nibbled, and once slightly drooled on by something with far too many legs. But this one stings. Time for some good old-fashioned medieval medicine. You make your way to the herbalist's cottage, at the edge of town, more of a shack, really, but filled with bottles, bundles, and smells that range from forest after a rainstorm to someone boiled moss with regret. Granny also lives here, and she's already waiting for you outside, squinting like she knew you'd show up bitten before you even left the abbey. Let me see, she barks, grabbing your wrist before you can object. She tuts. That's a rat bite, all right. Excellent diagnosis, you murmur. Do I have 6 hours to live, or can I make it to supper? She ignores the sarcasm and shuffles back into her hut, muttering something about people never listening until their skin starts hissing. You sit on a crooked stool beside the door and try not to think about how often you've ended up here. Rats were more than just a nuisance in medieval towns. They were a health hazard, especially when bites broke the skin. While the link between rats' fleas and the plague wasn't fully understood, yet people knew instinctively, or through generations of trauma, that a rat bite was no small matter. Remedies varied from herbal compresses to blessings involving onion juice mercury, or in one deeply questionable manuscript, boiled frog skin and powdered pigeon feather. Historians still argue whether these treatments helped or simply distracted people with their sheer weirdness. Ulsa returns with a clay bowl of something green and bubbling ominously. Put your hand in this. Don't scream. Why would I scream? She dumps a ladle of it directly on the bite. You scream. Jono flinches. Gerald wakes up, bites your collar, and goes back to sleep. You're lucky, Ulsa grumbles. 1 more hour and your hand would have puffed like a poisoned melon. I'm grateful. Don't be. The swelling might still spread to your elbow, or your dreams. Your eyebrow twitches. What do dreams have to do with it? Rat fever, she says dramatically. Sometimes it makes you dream of tunnels, of being watched. Jono leans in, wide-eyed. By rats. By other things, she says, eyes narrowing. Things that live in rats. You stare at her. You're making this up. She hands you a sprig of something sharp-smelling. chew this, it might stop the twitching. I'm not twitching. You will be. Back outside, hand bandaged and mouth filled with something that tastes like burnt lemon and swamp water, you begin your slow march toward your next job. You feel not better, but differently awful. Progress, maybe. Jono skips along beside you. You think she's serious about dreaming of tunnels. You glance at him. Jono. I once had a fever dream where a rat held a courtroom trial and I was sentenced to be gnawed. At this point, I believe anything. The bite pulses again. Not sharp, just insistent, like a tap on the shoulder that keeps returning. You ignore it. You've got another call. The city watch wants you at the grain warehouse. Apparently, rats have eaten through the lower floor and started nesting in the sacks. You sigh. Just once you say aloud, I'd like a day where someone calls me to say, everything's fine. Just wanted to give you a cookie. Jono thinks for a moment. What kind of cookie? Any kind. As long as it doesn't squeak. Your hand throbs, your ferret snores. Your apprentice hums a song about hedgehogs, and you're off to a warehouse full of more rats. Truly, you're living the dream. You reach the grain warehouse by late afternoon when the sky has taken on that particular shade of medieval gray that suggests both incoming rain and emotional resignation. It's a squat, ugly building on the edge of town with walls that were probably sturdy 100 years ago and now sag slightly like a tired librarian. Two city watchmen stand out front, poking at the door with the sort of caution usually reserved for plague victims or beehives. There he is, one of them exclaims when he sees you. The rat wrangler. You sigh. I prefer rodent consultant. The other guard gestures you over. They chewed through 3 sacks of barley. One of them chased the miller's apprentice up a ladder, said it had murder in its eyes. Might have been reflection you offer, or barley-related trauma. Gerald, now fully awake, and glaring, peers out from your hood like a sleepy general surveying the battlefield. Jono trails behind you, still chewing that weird herb Ulsa gave you, looking like he regrets every life choice that brought him here. You push open the warped wooden doors and immediately get hit by the unmistakable smell of grain-damp wood and something more sinister. There's a musk in the air, a rat musk. You know it well. It's like hay, wet rope, and defiance. Inside the warehouse is stacked with burlap sacks, piled high like miniature mountains. Some are half empty, their contents spilling onto the floor in golden mounds. And on those mounds, paw prints. So many paw prints. You step carefully, Gerald, hopping down to explore. All right, you mutter. Let's see what you've got, squeakers. It doesn't take long. You follow the trail of shredded fabric and rat droppings to the far corner, where a hole the size of a dinner plate gapes in the floorboards. You kneel beside it, listening. Screet, screet, screet. And then something new thump. Did you hear that, Jono whispers? You nod. The usual rustle? Yes. But that thump, that was different. You lower your lantern and see a pair of tiny glowing eyes staring back up at you. Then another pair, and another. They're all crammed into a dark hollow beneath the floor, stacked like furry goblins in a medieval bunk bed. You sit back on your heels and mutter, I hate it when they stare. Historically, grain stores were ground zero for rat infestations in medieval towns. The combination of warmth food and soft materials made warehouses ideal nesting grounds. Rats could tunnel through entire grain piles, spoiling whole shipments. In some regions, towns employed dedicated grain watchers who were paid to literally sit in storage rooms overnight with sticks. Unsurprisingly, it wasn't a popular position. Gerald dives into the hole with glee, his little claws scrabbling against the wooden edge. You hear a squeal, then silence, then a triumphant chirp. He reemerges a moment later with a mouthful of fur and pride. You set a few traps along the edge, baited with cheese rind and a smear of garlic oil. Gerald sniffs one approvingly. You really think this will work? One of the watchmen asks, peering nervously over your shoulder. It's not about the trap, you reply. It's about convincing the rats that you're not worth the trouble. You think they make decisions more than some humans. Jono, curious, pokes his stick into a nearby sack and is promptly buried in a small avalanche of barley. He sputters, stands up, and shakes grain out of his ears like a startled squirrel. You stifle a laugh. That's one way to check inventory. As you move deeper into the warehouse, you notice more signs, scratched walls, shredded fabric, and strangely a pile of stacked buttons in the corner. 6 of them, perfectly arranged. Jono sees them too. Do rats organize? You tilt your head. Not usually. But then again, these don't feel like usual rats. You hear a noise behind you. Clack, clack, clack. Turning around, you see a rat sprinting across a beam above your head, dragging a twig. Is that a weapon? Jono gasps. You squint. No, just a stick. Still, he looked angry. The floor creaks ominously under your boots as you step back toward the center. You decide to try a classic tactic smoke. Not enough to burn the place down, just enough to make the rats uncomfortable. You pull out a small bundle of dried herbs, rosemary, juniper, and something Ulsa called rat hater's grass. You light it and wave the smoke near the main nest hole. The rats scatter instantly, a few chirping in protest. Works every time you say. Unless they like smoke, Jono offers, clearly not helping. They don't. You finish your work, resetting traps, blocking entry holes with stones, and sprinkling the area with a mixture of ash and crushed mint. Rats hate mint, or at least you do so. It feels fair. Outside, the watchmen eye your sack. Get them all. You hold up one finger. No one gets them all. But I gave them a reason to reconsider their lease. They hand you a bag of coins that clinks in a satisfying way, heavier than expected. You nod your thanks and walk off with Gerald purring softly in your collar, Jono bouncing alongside you, and the soft squeak of protest echoing faintly from the warehouse. You don't look back. You never do, because in this town, if the rats know you're watching, they just wait until you blink. You head back toward the southern edge of town as the sun starts dipping behind the crooked chimney tops, casting everything in that warm, sleepy gold that almost makes medieval life seem cozy until you remember your hand is still throbbing and your sack is now twice as smelly. Gerald, however, seems deeply content, curled in your hood like a noble beast surveying his realm of squeaking subjects. Jono hums softly beside you, swinging a half-broken trap like a toy. You think there's a cure for rat bites that doesn't involve screaming and boiled moss. One can dream, you mutter. Truth be told, the bite is starting to concern you. It's redder now, the skin puffy, like rising bread dough, and the itch has graduated into a sort of warm, rhythmic throb. You pull your glove back over it and pretend it's fine, because what else can you do? You've still got one more job today, and you're hoping this one won't involve any rats at all. You reach your own doorstep just as twilight kicks in the sky, turning lavender, and the alley behind your house filled with soft cooing pigeons and the distant sound of someone yelling about missing goats. You push open the door to your one room sanctuary, dump your tools unceremoniously onto a rickety stool, and finally allow yourself to sit. It's not much, just a cot, a crate for a table, a few bundles of dried herbs dangling from the beams, but it's yours. The air inside is still warm from the day, and it smells faintly of vinegar leather and Gerald. You light a stub of beeswax candle and rummage through your medicinal shelf. It's really just a box with various jars, most unlabeled, except for one that reads in shaky charcoal, possibly not poison. You settle on garlic paste, a splash of vinegar, and a handful of sage wrapped in cloth. It's an old remedy, one you picked up from a traveling tooth puller who swore it kept his gums from falling out. You mash the mixture with the back of a spoon, smear it generously over your bite, and immediately regret every life decision you've ever made. It burns, not like a fire, more like your skin is remembering something embarrassing and blushing aggressively. Jono, watching with morbid curiosity, asks, "Does it hurt?" "No," you gasp. "I always make that face when I'm thrilled." He winces. "You want me to blow on it?" "Unless your breath smells like holy water and crushed mint, no." Still, he kneels beside you, fans your wrist gently with a folded scrap of parchment, and hums an off-key lullaby that might be about goats. You don't stop him. It's oddly soothing. Medieval remedies were often a mix of desperation, hearsay, and things that smelled bad. Vinegar, garlic, sage, onion poultices, and leeches were all part of the toolkit. One particularly bold recipe from a 12th century herbarium suggests soaking a woolen sock in wine, wrapping it around the wound, and then chanting the names of 3 saints. Not surprisingly, historians still argue whether these concoctions had any real medical benefit or if they just kept people too distracted to notice they were slowly recovering on their own. Gerald hops down from his perch, sniffs your bandaged wrist, and sneezes pointedly. You choose not to be offended. Jono looks thoughtful. You think maybe the rats are biting back on purpose. What, like revenge? Yeah, like they remember who you are. You roll your eyes. They don't organize. They're rats. He nods. Sure, but also, maybe they do. You both sit in silence for a moment, contemplating the unnerving idea that you might be at war with an enemy intelligent enough to hold grudges and chew through fences in the shape of passive aggressive letters. Eventually, you rise and toss the cloth into the hearth, watching it hiss and smoke. All right, time for the final round. Jono blinks. There's another job. Always. This one isn't a rat job exactly. It's more of a favor. You grab your coat, your stick, and the last piece of cheese from your shelf, which you carefully inspect for extra holes. Gerald reclaims his place on your shoulder like a mildly judgmental scarf, and Jono falls in step behind you, still humming. The job checking on Widow Aldith, who lives near the graveyard and swears her cellar is haunted by squeaking ghosts, she said. You didn't believe her then. You're not sure you believe her now. But the town pays you for more than just catching rats. You're also the unofficial inspector of strange noises, mysterious footprints, and anything that could plausibly be blamed on fur and teeth. You cross the darkened square. The wind's picked up now, carrying with it the faint scent of ash and something sweeter, like dried fruit left too long in the sun. A few windows glow with candlelight. The baker's cat eyes you suspiciously from a windowsill, tail flicking. You tip your hat. Don't worry, I'm not taking your job. Jono stifles a yawn. You think maybe after this one, we sleep. You nod. That's the dream. It is. You're tired. Your hand aches. Your ferret is twitching in his sleep, probably reliving that time he fought 3 rats behind the Abbey furnace. But for now, you've got one more door to knock on, one more cellar to crawl into, and if you're lucky, maybe the ghosts will be friendly. The road to Widow Aldith's house winds along the edge of the churchyard, where crooked stones lean like drunk monks, and moss has claimed most of the names. The moon is rising now, thin silver and absolutely unhelpful. Shadows stretch long across the path, and you instinctively keep to the center away from hedges where small furry things may or may not be plotting. Jono trudges behind you, dragging his feet with all the enthusiasm of a tired mule. Do we have to go now? Can't haunted rats wait until morning? You glance back. Haunted rats never wait. Gerald lifts his head from your hood, sniffs the air dramatically, and sneezes twice. A bad omen. Or he just inhaled some of the herb bundle you tucked into your collar. Either way, you keep walking. Widow Aldith's house is the last one before the field turns to forest. It's squat and angular, with an overgrown garden full of things that might be vegetables or very ambitious weeds. A single candle burns in the window, flickering like it's unsure of its own relevance. You knock gently at first, then again louder. The door opens with a creak, so theatrical you half expect it to introduce itself. Aldith stands there, wrapped in 3 shawls, and holding a broom that looks well used and not just on floors. You came, she says, as if surprised anyone would. Call and the rat catcher shall answer, you say, with a small bow. She frowns. You brought the child. Comes with the package. Jono waves. I also carry string. Aldith sighs and waves you both in. Her house smells like dried herbs, boiled pears, and something faintly metallic. The walls are lined with bundles of dried lavender garlic braids, and one disturbing cluster of dolls with no eyes. She motions you toward the cellar door without another word. You glance at it. It's small wooden and locked with a bolt that looks recently replaced. You said it was haunted, you ask, reaching for the latch. She nods. Every night after the bell tolls, scratching, whispers, once the cheese wheel moved on its own. Was it on a slope? It turned a corner. Right, of course. You unlatch the door and open it slowly. A waft of cold, damp air rolls out, carrying with it the unmistakable scent of mildew onions and rat funk. You light a lantern and begin your descent, each step creaking like it's about to file a formal complaint. Jono follows close behind, holding a long stick, and the hedgehog, who is apparently part of the team now. Sir Pricklebottom sniffs the air and promptly sneezes. The cellar is small, but cluttered jars of pickled turnips, sacks of something that may have once been potatoes, and shelves sagging under the weight of homemade preserves. You wave the lantern slowly, illuminating cobwebs, dust motes, and there, behind the far barrel, something moves. Not quickly, not scurrying, just shifting. You creep forward, Gerald hopping to the floor with purpose. Jono bumps a jar of beets, which lands on his foot with a wet splat. He yelps, the hedgehog squeals, and you roll your eyes. You reach the barrel and kneel. All right, ghost rat, come out and make your spooky demands. There's silence, then scrit scrit, followed by a low, unmistakable thunk. You tilt the barrel slightly and peer behind it. Ah, there's your culprit. A plump, very real rat is sitting next to a smaller wheel of cheese, chewing confidently while dragging it in small, awkward circles. Every so often, it bumps a stone, changes course, and continues. A perfect illusion of the haunted cheese wheel. See, you say, no ghosts, just ambition. Jono peeks over your shoulder. Do you think he was practicing turns or giving it a tour? Gerald lunges, but the rat bolts through a hole in the wall before he can strike. You sigh, pick up the cheese, and examine the area. There's a series of small tunnel entrances bored into the stonework, clever hidden behind crates. These rats are serious. You find rat droppings shaped like commas, an entire walnut husk, and a small ring. You frown and pick it up. Jono gasps, is that Aldith's? Possibly. You place the ring in your pouch and seal the tunnel holes with a handful of mint leaves and wax from your travel candle, a trick you learned from a Flemish exterminator with a limp and a fondness for licorice. Rats hate strong smells, and wax is more reliable than hopes and prayers. As you stand, Gerald scampers back to your feet and nods if ferrets could nod, which means mission sort of accomplished. Back upstairs, Aldith waits with a tray of tea and something vaguely biscuit shaped. Well, she asks, no ghosts, just cheese theft. She sips her tea. Good, I can sleep again. You sit across from her bite into the biscuit and immediately regret it. It's like biting disappointment dipped in chalk. She begins. Do you think they come for me because I live alone? You glance at her. No, they come because there's food. She chuckles softly. That's worse? Maybe, but at least it's honest. You leave a few traps, recommend sealing the cellar wall with mortar, and politely decline the offer of pear stew. Jono accepts it, of course, because he's young and his taste buds haven't yet evolved to protect him. As you step out into the cool evening, you flex your hand, still sore, still swollen, but you're upright breathing and not haunted by a cheese wheel phantom. So that's something. The stars are out. The wind has quieted. And for a brief, beautiful moment, the town is calm. Jono burps softly behind you. I think that pear stew was haunted. You grin. Well, now we know what attracts them. The moon is higher now, casting long shadows between buildings that creak and lean like tired drunks huddled together for warmth. You and Jono make your way back through town, your sack slung low, your boots heavier with the day's mileage, and Gerald gently gnawing on a breadcrumb you don't remember giving him. Even Sir Pricklebottom, secured in Jono's makeshift pouch, looks like he's had enough excitement for one rodent-laced lifetime. You're nearly home when you hear it, the heavy stomp, stomp, stomp of boots behind you. City Watch. And not the polite, we're just here to ask a few questions, sort of watchmen either. No, these are the cleared out, the tavern at midnight, with sticks and regret kind. You turn slowly. Three of them approach one of them, holding a crumpled parchment, the kind of parchment that usually means either bad news or taxes. You'd prefer taxes. You, the leader, barks. Rat catcher. You consider saying, "No, I'm a modest traveling badger groomer," but decide against it. Yes, you sigh, that's me. Has someone else's cheese gone missing? He steps forward and thrusts the parchment at you. It's a hastily scrawled order signed by the mayor himself, demanding your immediate and urgent assistance at the town's grain store. Already did it, you say. Took care of the nest laid traps, mildly threatened them with mint. The guard frowns. No, not the nest. Again. You blink. It's been 2 hours. He shrugs. They came back, bigger, meaner, and louder. You rub your temples. Did any of them have names yet? He doesn't answer. Jono pipes up. One of them threw a pebble at me. The guard snorts. Well, now they're in the mayor's storage, and he's not amused. You sigh deeply, the kind of sigh that carries the weight of 17 unpaid favors and one regrettable dinner invitation. Fine, but I'm charging overtime. You're already on the payroll, the guard grumbles. I meant spiritually. The walk back to the grain store is uneventful, except for the vague sensation that something's watching you from the rooftops, probably just a cat or a scout. When you arrive, it's clear things have escalated. There are scratches on the outside walls high up. The front door is ajar. You step inside and freeze. The sacks of grain aren't just chewed, they've been rearranged into shapes, circles, spirals, a small pyramid of barley, a crude rat-sized ladder leading to a window. One sack is split open neatly, its contents piled into a suspiciously deliberate mound. Jono whispers, "Do you think they're building something?" "I think we've crossed the threshold of simple pest control," you say. Gerald hops down and circles the pyramid sniffing. Then, without warning, he flops dramatically on top of it, like a sleepy king claiming his throne. At least someone's relaxed. You move carefully, inspecting the corners. Traps you set earlier have been sprung, all of them, but not triggered, just disabled. One even has a small rock wedged into the mechanism. Rats don't do that. Do they? You crouch by the back wall, the same place the original nest was, and find the hole has been widened, reinforced. Fragments of cloth and straw have been woven into the edges. It's unsettlingly well made. This is starting to feel less like a nest, you mutter, and more like a temple. Jono leans over your shoulder. Maybe they are haunted. You swat him gently with your cap. No ghosts, just clever vermin. Still, you can't deny the rats seem more organized, more coordinated. Their movements, their return, their almost strategic sabotage of your traps. It's not what you expected, and it's starting to bother you. You hear a faint scrit scrit again, then silence. Then, just as you're turning to speak, a small object flies through the air and lands beside your boot. A pebble. You stare at it. Jono stares at it. Gerald blinks. "Okay," you say slowly. "That's new." Then you hear the sound. Soft, squeaky, but distinct. Clack, clack, clack. Three rats stand in the beam of moonlight, filtering through the broken slats of the wall. One holds a stick. One holds what might be a beetle wing. The third just stares. They do not run. They do not squeak. They wait. Jono whispers, Do you think they want something? You stand dust off your knees and meet their gaze. I think you say, carefully, we just met the union reps. One of the rats flicks its tail and vanishes into the dark. The others follow silently. You don't chase them, you don't even move, because deep in your bones, you know you're no longer just catching rats. You're involved in something bigger, stranger, possibly political. Jono frowns. What do we do now? You shake your head. We go home. But the mayor can wait. We need garlic sleep and possibly a treaty scroll. You scoop up Gerald, grab your sack, and turn toward the door. As you leave, you glance back one last time. The barley pyramid remains untouched. You have expected to start glowing. You wake before dawn, not because your well rested heavens know, but because something cold and small is pressed against your face. You blink blearily. It's Gerald. He's placed a walnut shell on your cheek like an offering. You have no idea if this is a gift, a warning, or just a deeply confusing insult. But you take it anyway, because arguing with a ferret is a battle no man ever truly wins. Gino is snoring softly in the corner, curled up beside Sir Pricklebottom, who is inexplicably wearing a piece of thread like a ceremonial sash. The hedgehog may be ascending the ranks faster than either of you. You groan and sit up slowly, your hands still swollen, still pulsing with that warm rhythmic throb that says, hello, you've made terrible life choices. The bandage smells faintly of vinegar and crushed herb. You unwrap it, give the bite a skeptical glance, and rewrap it again with a sigh. It's no worse. It's no better. It's just there. You toss on your coat strap on your pouch and look down at Gerald, who's already prepped for action with a twinkle in his eye and the posture of someone who's expecting adventure, or at least cheese. Ready, you ask? He burps. Good enough. Today's appointment is strange even by your standards, a request from the mayor himself in person. Not a guard, not a courier, not a pigeon with bad handwriting. The mayor, which frankly is unsettling. You arrive at the town hall just after sunrise. The mayor's assistant, a thin man named Reginald, who looks like he hasn't eaten a full meal since the last harvest festival, ushers you inside with a whisper. He's waiting, and he's in a mood. Is it the usual moods? No, Reginald says, eyes wide. Worse. You're led into the grand meeting room, grand being a generous word, as it's mostly damp stone mismatched chairs and one taxidermied badger on a shelf labeled Sir Fluffington the First. The mayor paces near the fireplace, red-faced and flustered. When he sees you, he storms over like a barrel rolling downhill. Rats, he huffs again. Again, you correct. Technically, this is the third again. He thrusts a letter into your hands. It's sealed with a strange mark, something not quite official. The wax is black, the symbol, a spiral with tiny lines radiating outward. Found this pinned to my door, he growls. This morning, you break the seal and unfold the parchment. Inside, a single line of jagged writing. The barley is ours now. Squeak if you agree. You read it twice, slowly. Someone's making threats, you say at last. And either it's a prank, or your rats learned how to write. Jono, who has just entered carrying a cup of tea for himself and a tiny one for the hedgehog, of course glances at the note and whispers, I told you they were organizing. The mayor slams his hands on the table. I want them gone. All of them. I don't care how. Smoke them out. Drown them, charm them into exile. You're the rat catcher. Catch. You sigh. I'm not a wizard, sir. Then pretend he bellows. The thing is, if this were just rats, you could handle it. You have. You do. But this is something else. There's intent behind their movements. Strategy. Last night's trap. Sabotage the barley pyramid, the pebble thrown with aim. Now a note. No, rats don't leave messages. People do. But why? Back outside, you sit on the town steps, turning the parchment over in your hands. Gerald sniffs it carefully. His nose twitches. Then he curls back up and pretends he never cared. Jono looks over your shoulder. Maybe it's a hoax. Maybe you say, but it's a committed one. You glance across the square. People are waking, setting up stalls. Someone's sweeping. Someone's chasing chickens. Everything looks normal, but you've spent enough time with rats to know when it looks calm, it's because they're planning something worse. You walk back to the grain warehouse. You expect chaos. What you find is silence. Inside, the grain sacks are untouched. No fresh droppings, no chewed holes, no squeaks. Jono whispers, "Do you think they gave up?" No, you say softly. "They're waiting." You kneel and inspect the wall where the tunnel had been sealed with wax and ash the night before. Still intact. You almost breathe a sigh of relief when you notice it. A single rat footprint in the ash, then another, then letters. You step back. The footprints form crude shapes scratched into the dust. 4 letters. T-O-O. You stare. Jono leans in. To what? You don't know. You hope it's not too late, or too many, or heaven forbid, too clever. Because if they're leaving messages now, you may not be the hunter anymore. You stand there for a long moment, staring at the dusty footprint letters, like they're going to rearrange themselves into something more comforting, like just kidding or nice shoes. But no, just that short word, too. Jono crouches beside you, tilting his head. Maybe it's half of something, like too big or too many rats. Gerald hops down, sniffs the ash, sneezes twice, then promptly tries to roll in it. Whether that's a tactical maneuver or a bath, you're not sure. Either way, it doesn't help your growing unease. You shake your head. Rats don't spell words, they don't stage protests, and they definitely don't leave cryptic clues. Juno frowns. Unless someone's helping them. That thought lands like a rock in your gut, because it's not unheard of. Rat catchers in big cities, London, Ghent, Prague sometimes bred rats to release into neighborhoods, then got paid to remove them. The moral compass on that practice was foggy at best. You've never sunk that low. But if someone in this town wanted power or fear, or just a little chaotic fun, you rise slowly. Come on, where are we going? To see the one person who knows every secret in this town. Juno looks around. Who also? No. Better. You grin. Milo the gravedigger. He stares. The one who talks to his shovel. Exactly. Milo lives in a cottage behind the graveyard surrounded by stones, nettles, and a garden that looks like it was planted by accident. He's already outside when you arrive sipping something that smells like boiled weeds from a chipped mug labeled Chemistry 1 Intern of Death. Morning, he grunts. You hear about the tunnels. You blink. What tunnels? He points at the ground. Been feeling vibrations. Subtle, like shuffling under the dirt. Thought it was worms. but worms don't organize by the dozen. You exchange a look with Jono. How long? Week or so. Started under the chapel, moved toward the baker's, then the mayor's house. He takes another sip. Smells like rats. Sounds like politics. You kneel beside one of the graves, an older one stone cracked and sinking, and press your ear to the soil. It's faint. Scrit scrit. Pause. Thump. Not just rats running, rats digging. You sit back rubbing your temples. They're tunneling, coordinated, targeted. That's not instinct. That's a strategy. Milo grins. Told you? It's the prophecy. You blink. I'm sorry. He waves his mug. Old gravekeeper's tale. Every few centuries, the rats get tired of being hunted. They rise. They plan. And the only one who can stop them is someone with a ferret, a limp, and a questionable relationship with hygiene. You pause. Are you describing me? Maybe. He squints. How's your hygiene? Let's say flexible. He nods. You'll do. Jono pipes up. Should we tell someone? Like who you ask? The mayor. He's one lost sandwich away from yelling at his own reflection. You thank Milo offer him a dried fig, which he declines on religious grounds, and head back toward the center of town with a new, less than soothing thought planted firmly in your brain. If the rats are tunneling toward key buildings, and they've started communicating, and they've recruited help, then this is no longer pest control. This is a siege. You stop mid-step. Jono nearly bumps into you. What is it? You point toward the town hall. The mayor's office is dark, curtains drawn, quiet, too quiet. You gesture for Jono to stay back and creep forward. Gerald tense on your shoulder, like he's preparing for battle, or just really annoyed by the tension. You push the door open and freeze. The inside of the office has been turned upside down. Books scattered, drawers open, paper shredded, food half eaten, but no mayor. You walk slowly around the room, noting claw marks on the desk. A rat trap snapped but empty. A spilled ink pot. And on the mayor's desk, another note. This one is clear. 4 words written in barley. Too late. We begin. Jono peers over your shoulder. Well, that seems bad. You take a deep breath, pick up Gerald, and blow ash off your gloves. Right, you say. We need to prepare. For what he whispers. You turn slowly. For a war we're going to lose. Preparation, as it turns out, is more complicated when your enemy is small furry and possibly writing manifestos in barley. You and Jono hustle back to your workshop, which is just fancy terminology for a shack filled with traps bait and Gerald's collections of shiny stolen objects. You slam the door shut behind you and start inventorying like a man about to go squirrel hunting with a fork. All right, you mutter. Let's see what we've got. You empty your pouch onto the table. 3 sprung traps, 1 still functional snare, a mostly full bottle of vinegar, a length of string, the possibly not poison jar from Granny Ulsa, and a crust of garlic bread that you suspect Gerald planted there for later. Jono places Sir Pricklebottom gently in a shoebox lined with hay and adds a ribbon. He'll be our emotional support hedgehog. Good, you say. We'll need morale. You reach under the table and retrieve the heavy bag, the one reserved for dire emergencies. It creaks ominously when you lift it. Inside, 12 iron snap traps, 2 collapsible cages, 1 extremely rusty set of tongs labeled Nope, and a leather harness Gerald refuses to wear because he's not a show pony. You sit back on your heels, sigh, and rub your temples. We need a plan, a big plan, bigger than just a few traps and a prayer. Jono sits across from you, rubbing cheese wax into his hands like it's war paint. What if we go underground, meet them where they live? You look up. You want to invade the rat tunnels. He nods wide eyed. If we find their base, maybe we can stop whatever they're planning, or at least unplug their tiny leader. You don't hate the idea. It's bold, it's idiotic, but it's also the only proactive thing you've heard all day. And if they are organizing, communicating, even targeting officials, then the center of it all has to be underground. You can't win a siege by staying outside the walls. All right, you say. We find the tunnels. We follow them. We figure out who's behind this. Jono pumps his fist. Operation Rat Hole begins. Gerald narrows his eyes like he disapproves of the name. Sir Pricklebottom sneezes once, which you take as a blessing. You begin your descent at the only place that makes sense, the bakery, specifically the basement crawl space behind the oven where the infestation began weeks ago. You and Gerald have been in and out of it dozens of times, but this time you go deeper. You remove the back panel behind the flour sacks, usually covered in soot and the smell of burnt dough, and expose the narrow tunnel just big enough for a man who skipped breakfast. Juno shines the lantern forward. Smells like raisins. That's probably fear, you say. You crouch and crawl, Gerald slipping ahead like a tiny scout. Jono follows behind, holding the lantern like a blessed relic. The tunnel goes deeper than expected, much deeper. After 20 yards, the stone gives way to dirt and then to carved timber support beams, gnawed at the edges but stable enough. These weren't dug by instinct, you whisper. These are built. You pass rat holes carefully, some empty, others filled with bedding made from cheese wrappers and stolen church bulletins. One has what appears to be a doll's boot, repurposed into a recliner. You try not to think about that. Further in, the walls widen. The air gets warmer. You hear dripping water, faint murmurs, then light, dim flickering torchlight from ahead. You freeze. So does Gerald. Jono inhales sharply. Someone's down here. You press forward, silently peeking around the corner into a hollowed-out chamber beneath the town. And what you see makes your brain briefly consider going on vacation without you. It's a rat city. Tiny ladders, elevated paths made of popsicle sticks and bones, sacks of grain repurposed as walls. At the center, a platform of old tin and wood where 3 large rats sit calmly being fanned by 2 others with leaves. At least 10 more rats scurry through the streets below, and 1 human. You squint. It's old Thatch, the former bell ringer, disappeared 6 months ago after an incident involving a misfired goat. He's wearing a cloak made of stitched together rat pelts. He's feeding them, and he's speaking in rhymes. Rise, my whiskered comrades bold. Claim the grain, the cheese, the gold. Humans scorn you, trap and bait, but soon they'll learn it's us they'll hate. Jono grabs your arm. Do we arrest him? You whisper, for what unlicensed rodent poetry? You pull back, heart racing. Your mind is spinning. This isn't just a nest, it's a revolution. You crawl backwards until you reach the flour bins again. You, Jono, and Gerald sit in stunned silence in the dark bakery crawl space. So Jono whispers, the rats have a human general. Not just that you mutter, they have infrastructure. Gerald curls up in your hood, shaking slightly. You know what you have to do. You'll have to go public, sound the alarm, inform the mayor, gather allies, build defenses, possibly deliver a speech, and worst of all, you'll have to admit the hedgehog was right. The mayor does not take the news well. You barely get through subterranean rodent civilization before he begins sweating in places you didn't know could sweat. By the time you mention old thatch and the rat pelts, he's reached full flop mode, slumping into his chair like someone deflated his spine with a well placed insult. You're telling me he stammers that there is a colony of rats beneath my town being led by a disgraced bell ringer turned poet in a cloak. Yes, and they're organized. Yes, and armed. Well, you hedge if you count twigs buttons and moral outrage. Yes, Jono helpfully adds, and one of them definitely threw a pebble at me. The mayor groans, face in hands. I knew we should have built those fountains. Civilized towns have fountains. You wait while he mutters something about taxes and divine punishment. Gerald yawns and curls up on the mayor's official ledger, which probably hasn't been used for anything but stabilizing wobbly chairs anyway. When he finally looks up again, he says, "What do you suggest? You fold your arms, we prepare, we set barriers, we watch the tunnels, and most importantly, we don't panic." Too late, the mayor mumbles. You lean in, and we tell no one, not yet. The townsfolk panic when bread runs out. What do you think will happen if they learn that there's a rat parliament under their feet? He swallows. Fair point. You stand, I'll coordinate the defenses. Quietly. You'll have resources. You raise an eyebrow. Do you have resources? Reginald can give you 3 coins and a small donkey. That'll have to do. As you leave the town hall, the door creaks ominously. Jono walks beside you, carrying Sir Pricklebottom like a reluctant diplomat. The hedgehog wears a button now, his honorary wartime badge, apparently. The first step is forming an alliance. You need help, preferably from people who can wield things heavier than sarcasm. So you go door to door, not to everyone, just the ones who won't faint at the word tunnel. You gather a small group, the blacksmith's apprentice strong arms, no questions, the baker's sister, terrifying glare, Milo the gravedigger for obvious reasons, and Granny Ulsa because if this ends in plague, you're going to need potions, not prayers. They meet in your workshop that evening, crammed between barrels and boxes, and one extremely stubborn ferret who refuses to move off the table. So you begin. We're at war. Sort of. They blink. You explain the situation, skipping the rhyming speech for morale reasons. You describe the tunnels, the organization, the theft, the sabotage. You stop short of mentioning the pyramid of barley. That part still feels like a fever dream. Ulsa's the first to speak. Told you. Rats, remember? Milo nods. I once buried a man who insulted a rat. Next day, no shoes. You move quickly from planning to action. The town's main weak points, grain stores, root cellars, the Abbey basement get reinforcement. Traps are modified bait, upgraded tunnels mapped. You even start leaving false trails of food soaked in fermented vinegar to confuse their scouts. Granny Ulsa brews up something she calls sleepy spice. You don't ask what's in it. It smells like regret and boiled peppermint, but it does knock out test rats within 10 seconds. You work late into the night. Jono falls asleep on a pile of sacks, Sir Pricklebottom tucked into his elbow. Gerald guards the door like a fluffier, smellier gargoyle. You write notes by candlelight, sketching out the known tunnels, the patterns, the probable nests, and then, just as you're nodding off a noise, tap, 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 not a knock, not a rat, you blow out the candle, move quietly to the door, press your ear against the wood. Silence. You open the door slowly, and there, pinned to the frame with a fishbone, another note. This time the parchment is stained. You unfold it carefully. It reads, "We warned you. You didn't listen. Now we take the bakery." Your heart sinks. You turn on your heel and sprint toward the center of town boots, slapping stone breath coming sharp and quick. Jono and Gerald wake and follow behind in confusion. As you round the corner, the bakery is in sight, and so are the flames. Smoke billows from the back window. Flour dust explodes and puffs as barrels fall. Rats scatter across the roofline like shadows with tails. Oswin the baker is out front in his nightshirt, screaming and throwing bread rolls at the window. You rush to his side. What happened? They came, he cries. So many crawling, climbing, laughing. They knocked over the oil lamp. My yeast culture is gone. You pull him back as the flames rise higher. Gerald scampers into the wreckage and returns with a smoking wooden spoon like a trophy. The townsfolk begin to gather faces lit by firelight and fear. Whispers start. Jono clutches your sleeve. They struck back. You nod grimly. This wasn't just revenge. This was a message. One word echoes in your head. Begin. They told you. And now it has. The bakery still smolders by morning. The flames are out, but the damage is done. Scorched shelves, collapsed beams, the lingering scent of burnt rye and terror. Oswin stands by the rubble with a blackened spatula in hand, like a soldier at a battlefield grave. His expression says he's mourning more than pastries. You and Jono help where you can, moving crates, dousing embers, catching a loaf that somehow remained intact and flew out the back window during the explosion like a doughy cannonball. Gerald guards it now with the solemn dignity of a knight protecting a relic. Round you the town buzzes, not with curiosity, with fear. This is the third attack, someone mutters. They're targeting food, whispers another. My cat refuses to go outside, says a third. She's terrified. You overhear one woman insist the rats have tiny helmets. You wish that were false. The mayor arrives late, as usual, looking freshly powdered and freshly panicked. Explain, he barks. They struck with purpose, you tell him. Tactically, at night, while we were resting, exactly when it would cause the most chaos. He looks at the bakery's remains. Why the baker? Jono holds up a half-burned note found inside. You fed them first. You starved us next. The mayor goes pale. Is this about the wheat tax? You raise an eyebrow. You taxed the grain. He fidgets. A small tariff encouraged more diverse carbohydrates. You groan. They're not just angry, they're political. Gerald sneezes once definitively. Back at your workshop, the mood is grim. Your tiny militia assembles in silence. Ulsa Milo, the baker's sister, whose name is either Gudrun or Oi. You there, you're still not sure. And the blacksmith's apprentice, who now carries a mallet at all times and looks too ready. You lay out a new plan. We need to find the central nest, not just a tunnel, the tunnel, the heart, the throne room, whatever it is. Ulsa snorts. What are you going to do? Talk them down. You meet her gaze. If I have to. Milo grins. Been years since we had a proper underground diplomatic mission. I'm not wearing robes, you reply. But the idea simmers. That evening, you and Jono return to the tunnels. This time, your better prepared packs of bait, a lantern charmed with garlic oil, which Ulsa swears deters evil and minor rodents, and an official rat diplomacy flag, which is actually just a handkerchief stapled to a spoon. Jono carries Sir Pricklebottom in a pouch made from an old sock. He's been promoted to ambassador at Spines. You descend through the bakery's back tunnel, now scorched but still passable, and push deeper. Through the carved wooden beams, past old burrowed walls, now reinforced with broken plates and lace. These aren't rats living on instinct. These are designers. The tunnel twists, narrows, then opens into a chamber. It's not the city from before. This one is deeper, older, and guarded. At least 20 rats sit in a ring around the perimeter, each wearing bits of string beads, even what appears to be a miniature monocle. Gerald growls quietly. In the center stands old Thatch, cloaked, smiling. You returned, he says. As expected, you raise your hand in what you hope is a respectful rodent salute. We need to talk. He nods slowly. Yes, it's time. You sit on a crate, former cheese box, judging by the scent. Gerald sits on your knee, coiled and ready. Jono sits beside you, nervously chewing on a bread crust. Thatch paces slowly across the chamber floor, rats watching every move like they're at court. He speaks. For years we were scorned, hunted, called plague, called pest. But who truly made the mess? The rats who scurried for scraps, or the humans who spilled them? Look, you begin. No, listen, he interrupts. We adapted, we learned, we watched. And when you crushed one tunnel, we built two. When you laid traps, we studied them. And now we speak. Now we move. You take a slow breath. Then what do you want? He pauses. The rats lean in. We want respect. You blink. Respect. We want to be seen, heard, consulted before your boots come crashing down. We want recognition. You want a treaty. Thatch smiles. Exactly. You glance at Jono, who mouths, "What even is this week?" You turn back. What if I agree? Then we stop. The bakery was a warning. The abbey was a rehearsal. The town doesn't need to fall. Not if you treat us as neighbors. Not enemies. You think. You really think. And finally, you nod. I'll draft it. Thatch bows. Gerald does not. Gerald never bows. Back above ground, you write late into the night. A declaration, an agreement, a list of conditions, including grain sharing, peaceful coexistence, and at Thatch's insistence, a small permanent monument to rat resilience, preferably cheese themed. You take the document to the mayor at sunrise. He reads it once, then again. This is madness, he hisses. It's survival, you reply. He signs. 3 days later, the town celebrates a new age of cohabitation. Traps are retired. Bait is shared. Gerald gets a medal. Jono is elected junior rodent liaison. And the bakery rebuilt, with a tunnel beneath it, just in case. Peace, it turns out, is noisy. The town adjusts uneasily to life under the new treaty. The rats stop sabotaging pantries, and in return the townsfolk stop swinging brooms at every tiny shadow that moves across the floor. It's a truce, based not on trust, but on exhaustion diplomacy and a strong mutual dislike for conflict based property damage. The baker reopens with a new policy, one loaf per rat per week, posted just below the no screaming in the cellar sign. It seems to be working, mostly, except for the one rat who keeps trying to barter with bottle caps. Jono now proudly wearing a badge that reads Interspecies Communications. Assistant takes his duties very seriously. He spends his afternoons delivering notes between human and rat delegates, including a formal invitation for the town council to attend a subterranean performance of Cheddar Hamlet. Gerald, meanwhile, has entered semi retirement. He spends most of his time curled up on your cot, occasionally waking to glare at the wall as if daring it to squeak. You suspect he's still holding a grudge over the peace deal, but he begrudgingly accepts his daily fish treat, so diplomacy lives on. As for you, your days have changed. You still carry your sack and your traps, but now they're mostly symbolic. People wave at you in the street, some even thank you. One little girl gave you a drawing of a smiling rat, giving a thumbs up. You've pinned it above your desk, but the job isn't over, because despite the treaty, strange things are still happening. It starts small. A sack of barley disappears, even though the rats deny involvement. The Abbey reports a disturbance in their library books, pulled off shelves, scrolls chewed, inkpots spilled in the shape of a circle. And then there's the sound, a faint rhythmic thudding beneath the ground, heard by several people near the well. Jono hears it first. Listen, he whispers one morning. You hear that? You do. It's not the usual scrit of rats. It's deeper. Thump, thump, pause, thump. You follow the noise. It leads to the edge of town past the graveyard, near an abandoned windmill. You kneel, press your ear to the soil, and there it is again. Thump. You sit back slowly. That's not rats. Not anymore. You convene a meeting. Back in your workshop, surrounded by your odd little council, Ulsa Mila Gudrun, Jono Gerald, and a representative rat named Fenwick, wearing a tiny monocle and speaking via interpretive squeaks, you explain what you heard. Ulsa frowns. That's too deep for rats. Milo nods. Could be badger monks. I've heard the legends. No, you say. This is something else. Fenwick twitches his whiskers, then scurries to the middle of the table and begins tapping with one paw. Tap, 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 pause, tap. Morse code. No, rat code. Jono watches, then translates with a growing look of dread. He says, We didn't dig that. The room goes quiet. That night, you return to the windmill, alone. Well, not alone. Gerald's with you, naturally. He insisted by biting your sock. The sky is overcast. The windmill creaks gently in the breeze, its blades long since broken. You light your lantern and find the hollow spot where the sound is strongest. You start digging just a little. The earth is loose, too loose. And then, after only a foot or so, your fingers strike something solid. Wood, but not a coffin. Too smooth, too shaped. You dig more. A lid with a carved symbol. A spiral. The same spiral from the note, pinned to the mayor's door. You step back. What in the underworld? You open the lid. Inside, not a rat, not a person, but something in between. A mask, smooth round with tiny holes for eyes, too small for a man, too large for a rat, and a note. You lift it slowly. Phase 2 begins. The whisperers are waking. You stare at the mask. Gerald growls. You whisper, "What have I signed us into?" The wind rustles through the grass. Behind you, something skitters, but it's not a rat. You'd know. You close the lid, rebury the box. Back at the bakery, Jono is waiting. He sees your face and asks, "Was it rats?" You shake your head. No. And now the war you thought you ended might just have been a prologue. Sleep is out of the question. You lie awake on your straw mattress, staring at the ceiling while Gerald paces in increasingly frustrated circles across your chest. He's annoyed, and when a ferret's annoyed, the universe tends to know about it, usually through unexpected bites and unpleasant smells. Jono snores softly from across the room, hugging Sir Pricklebottom like a stuffed toy. The hedgehog appears unbothered by impending doom. You envy him. The mask, the note, the whisperers are waking. You turn the phrase over in your mind like a rotten apple. You're trying to convince yourself, isn't that moldy? Who or what are the whisperers, and why did they leave a cryptic warning buried under a windmill like a bad plot twist? You sit up. You need answers, and when medieval towns need answers, there's only one place to go: the library beneath the abbey. You gently peel Gerald off your chest, whisper to Jono, "Hold the fort." If it squeaks, bite back, and head into the night. The abbey is quiet, more so than usual. You pass through the garden, past a statue of St. Bertram the mildly confused, and descend into the library via the servants' stairs. Inside, the musty scent of parchment beeswax and elderly ink hits you like a gentle slap from a scholar. Shelves loom overhead, filled with books, scrolls, and ledgers that haven't been touched since whoever wrote them gave up and became a monk. You find Brother Petrus at a writing desk, hunched over a page with so many edits it looks like he's arguing with himself in Latin. He glances up, squints. Rat catcher. I need obscure rat lore. He stares. You clarify something about organized rodents, ancient tunnels, secret symbols. He frowns. Do you have a library card? You blink. He sighs. Never mind. He rises with a grunt and beckons you deeper into the stacks. You pass sections labeled Curses Mild Fish-Based Theology and Historical Uses for Turnips. Finally, he stops before a locked cabinet labeled Curiosities and Questionable Truths. He unlocks it with a key from around his neck. Don't tell the abbot. Wouldn't dream of it. Inside is a single scroll bound in black ribbon and sealed with wax stamped with, you guessed it, a spiral. Brother Petrus hands it to you like it's a dead bird, found in the tunnels beneath the old North Chapel decades ago. We thought it was a prank or a parable. You know monks. You nod, big fans of metaphor. You unroll the scroll carefully. The ink is faded but legible. A warning. When the tunnels grow warm and the grain is disturbed, when the watchers go silent and the traps go untouched, then shall the whisperers stir again, silent mouths, listening ears, and those who do not heed them shall lose more than wheat. You look up. You kept this in a cabinet marked Questionable Truths. Petrus shrugs. We thought it was a poem about mice. Back outside, the air is thick with dew. The street lanterns have long since gone out, and everything looks more suspicious than it should, particularly the shadows near the well and the ivy on the mayor's fence. You hurry home. Gerald meets you at the door, dragging one of your boots like an angry house cat. Jono bolts upright when he sees you. Well, you toss the scroll on the table. We're not just dealing with rats, we're dealing with history. You tell him everything about the scroll, the mask, the tunnel thumps, the ominous poetry. Jono is quiet for a long time. Then he says, "So, what do we do now?" You sit, you think, and then you say, "We go deeper." The next day, you gather your council again. Ulsa Milo Gudrun and the blacksmith's apprentice. Even Fenwick the monocled rat is present, perched on a spool of thread like a rodent magistrate. You read the scroll aloud. Milo whistles. That's dramatic. Ulsa snorts. Silent mouths, my foot. I've heard rats yell. Gudrun cracks her knuckles. You want I should wall off the tunnels. You shake your head. Won't help. This goes beyond traps and barriers. You look at Fenwick. Do your people know the whisperers? The rat blinks, then slowly nods, and squeaks 3 times. Jono translates old stories. Forbidden tunnels. Not our kind of rat. You raise an eyebrow, meaning another squeak. Jono frowns. He says they don't eat. They just listen. Later that night, you return to the tunnels. This time, you're not scouting. You're hunting. You wear thick gloves. Carry your best lantern. You've wrapped Gerald in a scarf for stealth reasons, though he keeps trying to unravel it. The tunnel is quiet. Too quiet. Until somewhere far ahead you hear it again. Thump, thump, thump. You follow the sound. You descend deeper than ever before, and eventually you find it. Not a rat nest, not a rat city, but a chamber, circular, carved in stone, ancient, and in its center, masks, dozens of them, all facing inward, all watching nothing. You step inside. The air is cold. Gerald growls. From the darkness, a whisper, not a squeak. Not a voice, but something in between, and it says, clear as moonlight, you made a treaty. You swallow? Yes. Then you broke it. Your blood runs cold. No, we've upheld it. A pause, then a whisper again. Not you. Behind you movement. You turn, and the tunnel collapses. Dust fills your lungs before panic fills your brain. You throw your arm over your face, coughing, blinking through the sudden shower of dirt and stone. Gerald claws his way up to your shoulder, wild-eyed and vibrating with the kind of tension that means run now or regret it forever. But the tunnel is gone, caved in behind you, no way back. Just the chamber and the masks, dozens of them. Smooth, identical, featureless, except for those small, perfectly round holes where the eyes should be. None of them move, but you can feel them, not watching with sight, watching with something else, like listening with bone. You take a slow step backward, another, but the whisper returns. It wasn't you. You grip your lantern tighter. Then who? Silence. Then he fed us. You blink. He fed you. A pause. Then he feared us. It takes a second before it clicks. Old Thatch. He didn't just organize the rats. He woke something. Something ancient. Something that's been here longer than the grain store. Longer than the abbey. Something that waits. You crouch, inspecting the chamber more closely now. The masks aren't randomly placed. They're positioned like sentries, like a circle of judges. At the center on the floor is a carving, a spiral, deep, worn smooth from centuries of air and footsteps. No, not footsteps. Scraping, claws. You whisper to Gerald, I think this is a shrine. He flicks his tail unimpressed, but you can feel the hair on his back standing straight up. You move closer to the spiral. There's a small hole in the center, about the size of a rat's skull, and surrounding it tiny markings, almost script, but not Latin, not any language you know. It feels wrong, like trying to read a whisper through fog. You reach out just to touch it, but before your finger lands, scratch, a sound behind the masks. Not from one, from all of them. Tiny scrapes, movement. They begin to shift, turning, not all the way, just a few inches, just enough to look at you. You freeze. Then a single mask drops to the ground. No thud, just a soft pat on the dust. You walk toward it, slowly. Pick it up. The back is hollowed out, smoothed, made for a small face, and inside a scrap of cloth. You pull it free and unroll it. It's another note, crude, but the writing is unmistakable. You chose the wrong piece. You stagger back. Gerald hisses low and deep, and from the shadows, a shape moves. Something bigger than a rat, too small for a man, loping, shuffling. You raise your lantern hand shaking. The shape stops just outside the light. You speak, "What are you?" It tilts its head, and in a voice so soft it barely stirs the air, "We are what you left behind." Then it vanishes, gone without footsteps, without squeaks, just the masks watching, waiting. You turn back toward the collapsed tunnel and do what you do best. You dig. It takes hours. Your fingers are raw. Your lantern is dying. Gerald takes turns helping and judging. But finally, the dirt gives way, and a shaft of fresh, blessed air cuts through. You drag yourself out of the tunnel and collapse onto the floorboards of the old bakery. Jono is there, pale, wide-eyed, holding a spoon like a sword. "You were gone. I came back. Are you okay?" You stare at the mask still in your hand. No. The next morning, you gather the council again. You place the mask on the table. No one touches it, not even Fenwick. You tell them everything: the chamber, the masks, the messages, the whispers. Ulsa nods slowly. "So, we didn't make peace with all the rats." "No," you reply. "We made peace with the ones who had something to lose." "But the whisperers," Milo asks. "They have nothing to lose, and every reason to take it all." Jono leans forward. "So what do we do?" You don't have a good answer, but you say, "We prepare." Again, but not with traps, with knowledge. You stand. You lift the mask. You say the words you never thought you'd say again. "I'm going back down." You'd think going back into a tunnel filled with mask-wearing whisper things would be the part you'd dread the most. But it's not. It's explaining the plan to Jono. "You're going back," he squeaks, nearly knocking over Sir Pricklebottom, who is, by the way, wearing a second sash, now likely self-assigned. "You were almost buried, or possessed, or politely threatened by a theater troupe made of bones." You hold up a hand. "Jono, I have to." They didn't attack, not directly. They wanted to talk, or warn, or unsettle you to death. Fair point, but too late. Gerald hops into your satchel with a resigned grunt. He's packed his favorite spoon and a piece of dried eel. You take that as his way of saying, "Let's get this over with." You spend the afternoon prepping. Not with weapons, this isn't that kind of fight. No, this time you pack scrolls, charcoal spare cloth, and a wrapped loaf of Oswin's crusty rye, in case diplomacy hinges on baked goods. You carry the mask too, Not on your face, you're not that brave, but tucked carefully in a side pouch, like a coin that might buy safe passage. You return to the same tunnel, past the bakery, past the patched up wall that now sports a helpful sign, not a rat hole, do not enter. You enter anyway. This time the tunnel doesn't resist. It seems prepared. The dirt is firm. The air is still. You walk deeper, each step more cautious than the last. Gerald leads again, tail high ears, twitching like radar dishes. When you reach the chamber, you pause at its edge. The masks remain, unmoved. The spiral, still at the center. But something has changed. There's a second mask now placed directly beside the first. It's smaller, rougher, still watching. You step into the circle and wait. 1 minute, two. Then you returned. The whisper again, close, everywhere. You nod. I have questions. A pause. Then you brought the mask. You hold it up. It was given. Then it is time. Suddenly, a low rumble. A section of the chamber wall shifts, stone grinding against stone, and opens into a narrow hallway carved in meticulous symmetrical lines. Not rat dug, not random, planned, made by something with intent. You follow. The hallway ends in another chamber. This one is clean, polished, walls reinforced with beams older than any in the town above. The floor smooth slate, dusty but precise. Symbols carved into the walls, circles, lines, spirals again. At the far end, a dais, and upon it a figure, small, upright, wearing a cloak, a mask, still as silence. You approach slowly. Gerald stays behind. He's loyal, but he's also not an idiot. The figure speaks, not with a whisper, with a voice, calm, clear, unplaceable. You are the first above dweller to witness this place in over 300 years. You blink. I feel honored, also mildly terrified. It doesn't laugh, but you feel a shift in the air, as if it could have laughed once. You swallow. Who are you? It steps down from the dais. Closer now, you see the mask is carved from bone, carefully, lovingly. We are the Whisperers, once caretakers, once watchers, once invited. You frown. Invited. It nods. Long ago your kind sought balance with ours, a pact, trade, space, like the treaty we just made. It shakes its head. That was a gesture. This was a covenant, a deeper one, forgotten, but not by us. You step closer. So what happened? The figure turns gestures to the walls, the symbols. Your ancestors broke the old accord. They sealed the tunnels, poisoned the deep grain, burned the roots of peace, and we slept. You say nothing, but when the pact above began again, we stirred. The balance called us, and now we wait. Wait for what? For your choice. You feel your pulse quicken. What choice? Renew the covenant, or end it. You glance down at your satchel, the mask inside. You pull it out, hold it. How do I renew it? The whisperer steps forward, lifts a clawed hand, and gently touches the mask. You must wear it. In the moonlight, above, with the others, you blink. The others. There are 7, chosen, one for each age of the accord. You are the first. Your brain sputters. What if I say no? Then the tunnels grow, the balance breaks, and we forget to whisper. You swallow hard and start to bite. It tilts its head. Yes, you look at the mask. Simple, bone, unnerving. You think about the rats, the town, Jono, Gerald, the bakery, the grain, the truce, the tiny monocle. And then you say, I'll try. The whisperer nods. Then the second shall come. The chamber dims. The mask grows heavy in your hand, and you understand something deep in your bones. You are no longer just a rat catcher. You are something more. You don't remember leaving the chamber. One moment you're standing there, mask in hand, the whisperer fading into the shadows like smoke in reverse. The next you're blinking in the early light of dawn, sitting on the stone lip of the town. Well, Gerald curled on your lap, Jono beside you, snoring softly, with Sir Pricklebottom nestled under his cap. The mask is still there, still in your hand, and now it feels warm. You stare at it for a long time, your breath fogging slightly even though the morning air is mild. The surface hums faintly like a tuning fork just after it's struck. You don't know if it's magic or memory or madness. Maybe all three. Jono wakes with a snort. Did I dream the part where the bone masked rat priest said you were chosen? Nope. He stretches and rubs his face. So, that's real. Seems that way. Are we going to talk about the fact that you've been recruited by some sort of ancient rodent order? You nod. Eventually, he squints. Now. No, you spend the day preparing, but not in the old way. No traps, no poison, no bait. This time you make copies, sketches of the mask rubbings of the spiral markings, charcoal notes of what you saw. Ulsa helps grumbling the entire time, but admitting quietly that your descriptions match legends even she thought were too weird to believe. She points to one phrase in a crumbling book titled Whispers and Wardens, Forgotten Creatures of the Undersoil. When the rats stop squeaking and the grain stops spoiling, beware, for something else listens. That's comforting, Jono mutters. Milo nods solemnly. I once dug up a skull with ears carved into the sides. You all stare at him. It blinked, he adds. You keep staring. He shrugs. Could have been the wine. By evening, you're back in your workshop pacing. The whisperer said 7. 7 masks. 7 people. 1 per age. What is an age anyway? A generation. A century. A round of cheese. You don't know. But you do know this the mask needs to be worn. In moonlight. With the others. Which means you're going first. You write a note. Just in case. You leave it on the table under a paperweight shaped like a very judgmental ferret. It reads, If I don't come back, feed Gerald, and don't let the mayor wear the mask. Then you grab a cloak, the mask, and the courage you've been saving for an especially terrible day. Jono stops you at the door. Do you want company? You smile. Not yet. He hands you a small bundle of bread and cheese. In case diplomacy gets hungry. The moon is high and full, hanging over the abbey like a borrowed coin. You climb the bell tower slowly, the mask tucked under your arm. At the top, you breathe in the cold air and face the town. The rooftops, the crooked chimneys, the winding lanes, and beneath it all, tunnels, chambers, secrets. You lift the mask. It's heavier now, like it knows. You lower it onto your face, and everything changes. Not pain, not darkness, but clarity. You see the town as it was, is, will be. Flickers of memory that aren't yours. A baker in tears. a priest sealing a tunnel, a child chasing a rat that isn't a rat. You see the second mask held in tiny paws. You feel it settle, a second wearer somewhere. The beginning of the seven. You remove the mask, gasping. Gerald is at your feet, blinking up at you. He licks your boot and curls up with a huff. The wind shifts. Somewhere in the distance, a bell rings. But you didn't ring it. You descend the tower and find Jono waiting. You okay? He asks. You think about it. No. Good, he says. That means it's real. You glance back once at the rooftop shadows. You swear something stares back, but not with malice, with memory. A week passes, then another. The town somehow returns to normal, at least on the surface. The bakery reopens again, boasting a new line of tunnel-safe tarts. The mayor declares the recent incidents to be a misunderstanding involving the enthusiastic reallocation of grain by marginalized subterranean communities, which may be the most aggressively neutral statement you've ever heard. But beneath the calm, something has shifted. The rats are quieter. The air underfoot feels heavier, and the spiral, it appears in places it didn't before, scratched onto the wall behind the tavern, formed in candle wax in the abbey, etched into the bark of an old elm outside the gravedigger's cottage. You're not the only one who sees them. Jono's been cataloging them in a small notebook he calls Whispers and Doodles. I think it's some kind of code, he says, flipping through a page filled with awkward, rat-shaped sketches, or maybe breadcrumbs, but like ominous ones. Gerald, for his part, refuses to go into the tunnels anymore. He's taken to sleeping in your sock drawer and growling at the walls when the wind picks up. You respect that. As for you, you're waiting. The mask still sits on your desk. You haven't worn it again. Not yet. Not since the tower. Because you haven't found the second wearer. Until now. You're walking through the market when you feel it, a tingle at the base of your neck. Not danger. Something else. You turn, and there across the square, a figure stands at the fountain, cloaked, small, familiar. You approach slowly. It's Fenwick, the rat, wearing a sash, a tiny scroll tucked beneath one paw. He squeaks once and offers it up. You kneel, take the scroll, unroll it. A symbol, the spiral, and beneath it a single line, written in careful strokes. The second has worn it. The third is listening. You look up. Fenwick is already gone. That night, you gather your council, Jono, Ulsa, Milo, Gudrun, the blacksmith's apprentice, Sir Pricklebottom dressed formally, and now Fenwick, sitting atop a stack of old ledgers, radiating smug importance. You read the message aloud, then say, "We're not alone anymore." Silence. Then Ulsa clears her throat. So, what does that mean, that there's some kind of networks? More than that, you reply. There's a pattern, a reawakening. Milo scratches his beard. So what do we do? You look at the group. We prepare. Again. But not for war. For what then? You place the mask in the center of the table. For the next stage. Jono leans forward. You think the whisperers will guide us? You shake your head. No. I think they're watching, waiting, listening. Still, you nod. Always. You spend the next few days differently. You walk the tunnels not to hunt, but to map. You speak with the rats not to scold, but to learn. You train Jono in diplomacy in case one day you don't come back from the dark. And most of all, you listen. You sit in quiet corners. You press your ear to the earth. You close your eyes, and you wait for the third, For the next mask, for the whisper that comes when the world goes still. And now, as the night deepens and the candles burn low, you settle into your chair beside the hearth. Gerald is already curled beside you, snoring softly, a paw twitching toward invisible dreams. The mask rests on the shelf, quiet for now, its smooth surface catching the flicker of flame, the way moonlight sometimes glints on a coin left forgotten in a well. You take a slow breath, the kind that fills your chest, warms your limbs, and eases the ache in your tired hands. The day is done. The grain stores are safe. The tunnels for now are still. You let your thoughts drift to the quiet laughter in the market, the flick of a tail disappearing beneath a crate, the rustle of tiny paws that no longer spell danger but possibility. Not every whisper is a warning. Some are invitations, some are promises, and some are just soft reminders that even beneath the world, we know something older and wiser may be listening, waiting for someone like you to listen back. You lean your head against the chair, close your eyes, and let the warmth carry you. The shadows stretch long, but they are gentle, and somewhere far below, in a chamber that remembers your steps, the masks are watching, but only to keep you safe.